time is 5:01 p.m. We will now call this special meeting, public meeting of the Board of Trustees of Humble Independent School District to order. The first item is to adjourn to closed session. A closed session of the board will now be held on the matters contained in the notice for this meeting. Should the board determine any final action, final decision, or final vote be required with regard to any matter considered in such closed session, then such final action, final decision, or final vote will be made upon reconvening of this public meeting in open session. The time is 5:01 p.m. The time is 6:34. We will now convene back into our open session of this public meeting. And our first item, item A, public hearing to discuss the 2023-24 budget. The board will hold a public hearing on the budget as required by Texas Education Code 44.004F. The board may hear public comments, discuss, and may adopt the budget. The board asks that comments pertain to the budget and be no longer than 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak towards the budget? Okay. So if there is no one to speak, we're going to move to questions and comments by patrons of the district regarding any other agenda items, but since there was no one has signed up, we will move on to actions coming out of closed session. And action item from closed session is item 4A, personnel recommendations. Mr. Sitton, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, Mr. President, I move that the board approve the administration's personnel recommendations as presented in closed session with addendum.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor? Martina and...
I apologize, Mr. Scarfo. We have two board members who were zooming in remotely.
There they are.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. And
Only one. Marcus is not.
Okay.
his phone dropped off? Okay. Okay, so that's... Okay. You can wait. Marcus, okay, I'll repeat that. So we have this item for personnel recommendations. Motion's been made and seconded, and I asked for discussion, but I apologize. Martina wasn't on the screen yet, nor were you, so I'll ask again, any discussion? Okay, no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, now we will move to item 5, our consent agenda. Item A, budgetary transfers and amendments. Okay, that's consent. And item B, revision of board operating procedures and board policy BDAA, inclusion of parliamentarian in the board officer rotation. Okay, that's consent. Okay. Those are only two items. Mr. Sitton, would you please give us a motion on the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 5A and 5B.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Parker, second. Okay, all those in favor? Okay. That motion passes 7-0. Okay. Okay, now we will move to item 6 on the agenda, action items. Action item A, 2023-24 compensation plan. Mr. Sitton, may we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. President, I move to approve the proposed 2023-2024 compensation plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mrs. Parker? Okay, and We will go into discussion, but I'm going to pause here because I'm going to ask Mr. Beatty to come and do the presentation of the budget, and then we'll go through that.
Evening, trustees and Dr. Fagan. We are approaching the finish line for the budget process here. This has been a unique budget cycle. I'll never forget this one, and this is probably a record for us, the latest we've ever presented a final budget for the board. So hopefully this was a one-time event, but we're happy to present the budget tonight. Not much has changed in the last time we met, but overall, everything that I'm presenting tonight is aligned with district goals. And I haven't given up hope on this slide. You know, you're probably getting tired of seeing this same slide up there. Haven't been able to fill in the bullets to this slide. There is no major legislation changes. The one thing I'll note is House Bill 3 was signed by the governor recently, and the state is in double overtime now in the second session. So we'll see where things will go from here. Property taxes is one of the major items that they're discussing right now still. So there could be changes to come, but as we have a 7-1 fiscal year, we must present you a budget to adopt by the start of our fiscal year. So everything I'm presenting tonight is based off of current law. So it is a very, as I said, a unique budget cycle. It's a difficult and challenging situation for a lot of school districts. You'll see a lot of deficit budgets out there. Tax rate elections, potentially eliminating homestead exemptions, salary freezes. It's across the board trying to make ends meet. We really have a challenging situation right now, kind of a 1-2 punch with attendance isn't what it used to be, and so there's an impact that we're seeing that our attendance hasn't recovered from pre-COVID. So we have a little bit less funding there that we're receiving, and then inflation, things are costing more. So two sides of this this coin here, it's more difficult to make ends meet. So districts across the board are trying to do whatever they can to create a budget this cycle. So hopefully something comes through in the legislative session, special session to help with that. But everyone's trying to do whatever they can to get a budget. So overall in this budget, we are recommending and what was just approved, the 3% on average raise for all staff. We have recommended to continue to pay the $1,000 non-House Bill 3 staff. The $1,000 stipend, that's a $500 payment in December and a $500 payment in May. And then being able to comply with state mandated TRS rate increases, and also an employer contribution, an increase to employer contribution for the health plan. This is a very employee-focused budget that has a lot of compensation enhancements in it. And in a year where it's very difficult, the funding isn't necessarily there, there's still a lot of great impact to compensation. So the 3% raise on average is $11.5 million. The benefits increase to employer contribution is $1 million, increase to bus driver rates, special education stipend adjustments, just overall market adjustments where we may have some jobs that are falling out of line in relationship to our peers. And LSSP, SLP diags, OTPTs, increasing, adjusting pay there and compensation, and increasing our starting hourly wage up to $12.50. So that's an increase from the 12 that we had presented in last year's budget. And then, of course, continuing the non-House Bill 3 stipends at $3 million. So overall, that's almost $17 million in enhancements to employee compensation. And so what does that mean? How does that impact employees? Well, there's still a lot of moving parts here. We don't know everything that every district's going to do, but we feel that it's very likely that we'll remain the second highest paying district in the area. And also, we're very confident that we will have the lowest health plan premiums in the area. And so kind of just to put that perspective, it's easy to say we have the lowest health plan premiums in the area, but just to put some numbers to that, the Humble ISD Health Plan employee-only premium is $50. And these are the rates that we had, the new rates for the premium plan, so there were some slight increases to premiums that we recommended. So even after the recommendations we made to the health plan, it is $115 less than the average Houston area district. So this is a combination of Tier S districts, non-Tier S districts, but on average, everyone else out there is spending $165 a month for employee-only coverage, and that results into almost $1,400 annually. So if you're on the family plan, the savings even become greater, almost up to $2,700 as compared to other districts. So when we're saying we're second highest paying district in the area, but the lowest health insurance premiums, if you're taking health insurance, then we're we're number one in total compensation in the area. So also this budget prioritizes personalizing education, and so inside the budget we're adding special education teachers, dyslexia teachers. The state comp ed double staff classroom is adding more teachers to support the double staffed initiative, where one of the new things we're doing this year is adding double staffed middle school math classrooms. And then we have the North Belt, Old North Belt pre-K center to alleviate some overcrowding in other elementary schools. And the PRISMS program, the one minor change to the budget that's being presented tonight from the last budget workshop is a little bit of increase to PRISMS licenses, because we had such a strong reception from teachers that wanted to participate in that program. So we added a little bit of funding to increase the licenses that we were able to purchase. And then the wellness school is included in the budget, which is a pilot model where is a school within a school almost to support students' mental health and overall wellness. This budget's also prioritizes safety, and so we've discussed a lot about flock cameras and safety equipment, and enhancing our buildings to provide greater security and safety. And then also the new thing since the last time we met is that House Bill 3 was signed by the governor. So I just want to make a note that this budget does not have the revenue and expenditures associated with House Bill 3, but when we're ready to move forward with that plan, we're ready to do that. Also, the budget is aligned to our goals. Just to kind of, utilities are increasing pretty rapidly, and so this budget includes an increase to support the higher utility costs. We're also looking for ways to be innovative about utility costs and try to cut that down. And then same thing with insurance rates. have been increasing. It's actually sometimes difficult to even find coverage because in our area specifically, there have been lots of claims, Winter Storm, Harvey, things like that, that insurers are, it's just more expensive to find those coverages. And then also providing for department needs. One minor add to this budget from the last budget workshop is we added a couple HR support positions and a public communication support position. So overall, where we're at, you'll notice hopefully pretty quickly that this slide looks a little bit different than prior budget workshops. We had been presenting a deficit up until this point, and after the last budget workshop, we have been reviewing every revenue source that is available to us and which revenue sources we have some control over. And we were able to look really closely at our investment portfolio and adjust what we have in that portfolio to extend the maturities, to guarantee returns for a longer period of time, which allows us to add some of that revenue into recurring revenue. And then also we were looking closely at SHARS reimbursement, which is the school health and related services program that's available for us to find some reimbursement opportunities for services that qualify under that program. And so we were able to increase our projected revenues and result in a small surplus here of about $284,000 after expenses. We also have a strong fund balance position. We exceed our 25% requirement by policy, and so having that strong position allows us to be able to recommend some one-time costs that the fund balance could support those expenses for. So we are presenting about $7.7 million of one-time expenses that would come from that assigned fund balance, and some of those include safety, security, prisms. Some aspects of prisms are there. But again, we have a strong fund balance position, and even after these expenses, we will continue to be have a strong fund balance. So overall, where we're at, the operating budget we're presenting a surplus of about $284,000 in the operating fund. Total revenues about $510 million, and expenditures $510 million, and really proud of being able to present that slight surplus to you, as our goal is always to present a balanced budget and utilize all funds available to us. Our child nutrition budget, we're presenting a deficit budget here because we have excessive fund balance that we built up. We have projects, we've been trying to do projects to spend those funds, but with supply chain issues over the past couple years, we haven't been able to complete the project. So we have those are actually moving forward right now. So we are trying to address that situation with this budget.
Mr. Beatty,
yes.
before you move off this, just so the public will know, people who listen or might watch later, so it doesn't appear that, we're just trying to spend this money to get, we have to.
Yeah, and this is ensuring that we have the plan. You know, as far as TDA requirements with the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program, you're not allowed to build up this excessive fund balance. And so not only would we have the plan, but we're representing that in the budget that we're recommending for you to approve so that we can ensure that we address that situation. And then our debt service budget, which is how we service our long-term debt and bond program, recommending a balanced budget there that revenues meet expenditures to service our debt. So overall, the by-function budget, this is the final report for all funds, general fund, child nutrition, and debt service. We are, overall for these budgets, we're looking at about $625 million in revenue, and this is the first year we've presented a budget in general fund that's over $500 million. We've been approaching it close the past couple of years, but this is the first year over $500 million in our general fund. And so this budget was, we built this budget on tax rate assumptions, and we utilize current law. Even though there's a special session, something could change. We won't present to you the tax rate for adoption until September. So we have time on that. But as far as this budget goes, we're doing all of our calculations as of current law, which at this time would impact the M&O tax rate by lowering it by about a little over 6 cents, maintaining the interest and sinking tax rate, and the overall tax rate would go down to $1.2312. So that's the lowest that continues to lower every year due to the value growth. As values grow, this is an illustration of not the current year House Bill 3, but 2019 House Bill 3, where the values, as they increase, the tax rate, the local tax rate is compressing, and this is just a visual representation of where seeing that those formulas work. And so that as far as tax rate calculations go, just a reminder that there are a lot of different, I guess, terms as it relates to tax rate. Right now, we are basing everything on current law and tax code. That could change, but just a reminder that we don't set values. Harris County Appraisal District sets the values of the property. There's formulas where the state determines how much funding a school district should receive to operate, and then we plug the numbers that we get into truth in taxation templates, and that's how we generate our tax rate that we're proposing. So all of those factors could change here shortly, but we are ready to address that whenever the time comes. And again, we don't need to present the tax rate to you until September. And one more piece of calculation there that we need to receive is the certified rolls from the July rolls from HCAD, which will potentially alter the numbers we're using for this. But I wanted to at least give a heads up and update on where we are with tax rate. So with that, any questions about the budget?
Mr. Sitton?
Yes, so we've got a balanced budget, but that does not include some of the HB3 items that appear to be more unfunded mandates. So we're not going to be made whole on everything that we need to do to be compliant with HB3. So how is that going to affect the budget? Where is that deficit?
And I apologize. It looks like Mr. Holmes has dropped off.
Yeah.
We would need him visible for purposes of the meeting and his attendance, but I don't know if he has stepped out. Okay, thank you. My apologies, Mr.
Okay.
Sittenford.
So how would that, there he is, he's back.
Okay.
How would that affect the budget? Where's that money coming from? Will we end up coming back with a deficit budget at that point?
So I do not have we'll continually review what we think that the projected revenue for House Bill 3 will generate. Depending on the plan that we come up with and we try to implement, it may be still a balanced budget, a surplus, potentially, depending on just how much that recurring expense our plan involves. So we have some we have some room there to implement that, but it would depend on the plan we move forward with and the associated expenditures if that will mean a deficit budget. But there is some revenue that is not, that is possible from House Bill 3.
Anyone else with questions? Okay. So I guess we have a choice here to not address the recurring expense at this point in time that HB3 would add, depending on what option is picked. Or we can discuss that. But if we're going to discuss that, we will have to, in terms of the various options that we can go on that amount that we put into the budget, we will have to go into closed session to discuss that. So if you guys will need to let me know, I'm open to whichever way you want to go this evening. It's not late. I hate to make you guys sit and wait on us again, but it is pretty crucial. Mr. Sitton?
So the option is to pass the budget as presented, and then we would have to come back at the July meeting or potentially the August meeting to amend that budget, correct?
Yeah, we'd have to amend it at that point, and we'd also have to, the other thing too is I don't know that we haven't come down on an option, so we don't know what we'll amend. So at some point, we'll have to have that discussion, whether it's this evening or at a later date, like say before the July meeting, we could have to meet earlier. Yeah, we'll have to come down what that number is going to be. So at some point, because we also need to give Dr. Fagan and staff, we're going to say, okay, we're going with this one, so there's a lot of work to do depending on which way we go, and whatever the board as a whole decides is going to be that option. So yes, to answer the question, we can just approve tonight as it is, knowing that we have to amend. And by amending it, we may end up with a deficit budget. And most likely we will, unless we know more about revenue by that point, which.
All depends on the plan
Yeah, exactly. So.
All right, so one more follow-up
Yeah,
to
go
that,
ahead.
and then I'll be quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Dixon, and she'll go.
So, Ms. Mayor, if you might be able to help me here. So if we approve the budget as presented, and then technically, I believe we could go into closed session without closing the meeting, to kind of be fair to staff that wouldn't need to be here for the closing of the meeting to start having that discussion.
Right.
I would recommend, because there's nothing specifically posted on the agenda tonight over and above the consent items and the budget items, to be cautious about the level of discussion outside the scope of the budget. Obviously, we have restrictions in terms of notifying the public when we're going to have certain types of conversations, even if they're going to be taking place in closed. So that would be just my one caution, is to make sure that we're talking about the posted items as placed on the agenda.
Ms. Dixon, you had your hand? Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say I'm open to going to closed session, but I would prefer to have that discussion later when we have all of the information. And I know that there's planning involved, but I do think we would have a grace period on when something is adopted versus when it has to be implemented. But I'm open to going to closed. I just like making decisions when we have information.
Ms. Marr, I mean, since this is part of the budget, putting HB3 in there for the recurring expense, we would be free to discuss that. I mean, we can't discuss the detail of that here because
Correct.
it's safety.
Correct.
So-
Within the scope of the budget, it is absolutely a wonderful topic for the board to engage in discussion on. It was just for the security aspects of it, the recommendation would be to have the nuts and bolts in closed session, just given the security issues.
Yeah, no, exactly, that's what I'm saying, but we would be able to do that now if we wanted to in closed session. So I want to really give you guys the opportunity to decide whether we want to do this now to have some discussion, even if we don't come to a final determination, but there are some questions that people may have, and we can't do it here, but we can stop and go into closed session to do that,
I think we should go into close because September 1 is the
the effective date.
effective date of the law.
Mr. Holmes?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Ms. Dixon, you said you were okay if we,
Yes.
okay. So the time is 7:03. We will adjourn to closed session for items covered in the agenda. Okay, we're back into open session at 8:10 PM. And I apologize to our community members that are in the audience and to staff, but it was a very important discussion that we needed to have in terms of HB3 compliance. So appreciate that. Okay, so now we have on the table action item A. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Okay, this is the compensation plan. So all those in favor? Okay. 6-0, one abstention. Mr. Holmes had to leave us because of his flight, so. All right. The next item is the 2023-24 budget adoption. It's action item B, 6B, 2023-24 budget adoption. Mr. Sitton, may we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. President. I move to approve the 2023-2024 budget for the General Fund, National School Breakfast and Lunch Program Fund, and the Debt Service Fund as presented with the following amendments. Increase the General Fund recurring revenue by $718,000 and General Fund recurring expenditures by $805,000. And reduce fund balance by $805,000 for one-time expenses associated with the implementation of HB3, and thus also keeping the budget surplus as mentioned earlier.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay. At 6-0, one abstention.
Was there an abstention? I'm sorry.
It's not formally noted
It
as
doesn't
an
need to be an
abstention.
abstention, yeah,
Ms.
okay,
Dixon,
that's-
it would
he's
just
not-
simply be
He's
6-0.
got it. Okay. Okay. So it's 6-0. Okay, moving on to the last item, meeting closing. Are there any considerations of topics for future board business? Okay. Seeing none, we will bring the meeting to a close. The meeting is adjourned, 8:13 PM.